Biden, Harris, Buttigieg, major contributors, elites.
Author, activist, public intellectual, and Bernie Sanders supporter Cornel West was on CNN where he essentially took down Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Now, I don't want you to get it twisted. Cornel West is very respectful. He's always a very kind, respectful dude. It's just that he's a straight shooter. I mean, this is one of the few guys where he's allowed to be on television saying what he is saying. And I think part of it is because he is so entertaining and so honest. So let's get to the first clip here where he goes and basically exposes Joe Biden.
First, I just want to get your reaction to what we're hearing from Biden today, talking about race, including an apology.
You know, my dear sister Anna, it just strikes me as the typical behavior of the establishment politician. He's now regretted what he said. He now apologizes 2 weeks later. Two weeks ago, he said he wouldn't apologize. You say, oh, I see. You check the polls and find out where you really stand. He's changed a lot in 2 weeks, not just changed a lot in 40 years. He's also eulogized Strom Thurmond and talked about his truth and his genius. We can go on and on and on. This is a matter of the record. He has a contextual ethics. My dear brother Bernie Sanders has a consistent ethics. At the very moment in which he's working, Biden's working with Jesse Helms on this amendment to make sure there's no state-sponsored busing to desegregate schools, Bernie Sanders is getting arrested with Martin King and the others fighting for not just integration, but for busing as well. So the problem is that you and I know, we live in the political age of Bernie Sanders. Everybody's got to talk about medical care for all. Everybody's got to talk about $15 for a living wage. Everybody's got to talk about what are you going to do with student debt. Bernie wants to eliminate it. We've come now to the context in which Bernie Sanders is setting the tone and the terms of the debate. It's just a matter now of acknowledging the establishment in the Democratic Party is unraveling. When you look at the Bernie Sanders campaign, what do you see? Major contributors, Walmart workers, major contributors, teachers, Biden, Harris, Buttigieg, major contributors, elites, those at the top. It's a very different orientation. We are witnessing the awakening of poor and working people of all colors coming together in solidarity to save this democracy, given the political pathology at work in the White House.
All right. Now, before I say anything more, I want to thank Wesley Wiles on Twitter. He's the one that shared this video with me, so I was able to find it and discuss it now. But I just want to pull a couple things out of here from Cornel West. He mentions this thing like really quickly, but this is a great way of putting it. Biden has contextual ethics versus Bernie Sanders, who has consistent ethics, meaning that Biden plays to audiences. So as he was mentioning there at the beginning, Biden initially was not going to apologize for his comments around on busing, but then all of a sudden, when he sees the polls drop, he sees his numbers drop by 10 points. Oh, now he's apologizing for what he said. I mean, it shows you Biden is not an honest guy. Meanwhile, Bernie's been on the correct side of this issue and practically every single issue for the past 40 years. He's been a leader and consistent on this. Now, the other piece there that I think is so important to always mention almost every time you talk about this race is the donors. Who are these candidates working for? So you look at Biden, you look at Buttigieg, you look at Kamala Harris, Wall Street, corporate interests, wealthy donors. That's who these candidates represent. You look at Bernie Sanders, small dollar donors. Bernie doesn't even have private fundraisers. So understand these are very different campaigns in terms of how they're run. And the reason Bernie does that is because he understands that when corporations or the wealthy, when they give these giant checks to these campaigns, they expect something in return. And even if Bernie is not or does not want to give into what those big donors want, he understands the perception of how it would come off if he was taking that money. And again, how could you really trust a candidate if, they say, oh, sure, yeah, I'm not going to listen to my big donors, but they keep having these private fundraisers, these face-to-face meetings with these people that are giving them lots and lots of money that are funding their campaigns. Even if you don't want that to have an impact on you, it will. It's human nature to be impacted by your surroundings. So Kamala Harris, Biden, and Buttigieg, even if they're 100% honest in their willingness to stand up for the average person. The very fact they're having these private fundraisers will absolutely impact them. Even if it's not consciously, it'll impact them subconsciously. Now, let me get to Cornel West here, where he talks about Kamala Harris.
Let me ask you about Senator Kamala Harris and some comments and plans she put forward today. She is proposing a $100 billion plan to help African-American homeowners. It would provide grants of up to $25,000 to help cover down payments and closing costs for homeowners in redline communities. It would better enforce anti-discrimination laws. It would increase funding for a program that helps first-time home buyers. Her goal is to close the U.S. racial wealth gap. Is this something you want to see Sanders get behind, or does he have a better first step?
No, I think he actually has a much better first step, because you're going to have to come to terms with the grotesque wealth inequality. You're going to have to come to terms with Wall Street greed. You're going to have to come to terms with the 1% owning 90% of the wealth and 3 individuals owning 50% of the 3 individuals having wealth equivalent to the 50% population in the United States. So that we welcome, Senator and Sister Harris's movement in this regard. But even Sister Harris, we have to be very honest about this. When you're criminalizing parents whose children are truant, when you're opting for prisoners remaining incarcerated rather than release because you want to use them for cheap labor. This is when she's top cop. This is when she's prosecutor in California. You can't come along lately and sound progressive. You got to be consistently progressive, the way Brother Bernie Sanders has been for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. This is not just a circus for progressive gestures. This is a life lived and a politics connected to bearing witness.
So Cornel West just completely nails it. I mean, this is the reason why Kamala Harris was able to come out of that first debate with such high popularity and be able to almost double her support in the polls. Nobody went after her record. I mean, as just one example, she locked up the parents of truant kids while she was the top cop. I've done a previous video on Kamala Harris's record, so I don't want to go over all the details now. But this kind of thing needs to be brought up in these debates. Someone needs to go after her on her record. Otherwise, she's going to continue growing in the polls with her fake progressivism. I mean, you see with Medicare for All, she has walked back her position on Medicare for All multiple times now, where she has said something either in a town hall or in a debate, and then the next day when she's interviewed about it, she changes her mind. This is somebody you cannot trust on these issues. So even if you don't care about Kamala Harris's horrible record, understand that even if she's saying some of the right things now, like when it comes to healthcare, when she says the right thing on a debate stage, it doesn't mean that she will actually fight for it. So the more that these issues come up, whether it's with Biden or with Kamala Harris, I think the more that the electorate will be informed on who these candidates actually are and who it is they can actually trust on these issues.